Hello people, it's me, TFR Wellness, and welcome to the first of 3 videos I'll be doing before the end of the year, in the next 4 days. And basically, obviously you'll be expecting me to do my best bots of the year video and my end of month bot haul, but today I'm going to be doing the dross. Basically, I'm going to be doing a video on the worst bots that I bought this year, or the worst bots that I bought. The bots that, the bots that didn't meet my minimum standards of expectations, the bots that disappointed me, the bots that pissed me off because they got customs hits or whatever, and bots that just didn't measure up, that just wasn't what I expected, basically. So they can't all be good, can they? There's got to be some stinkers. There are a couple of bots here that maybe don't deserve to be on this list because they just so happen to be in a particular month where everything else was better than it, and even though it's a pretty good bot in its own right, everything else was better than, and it was just the bot that I liked the least out of everything that I got, even though I still like it. There's a couple of bots that kind of come to that, but anyway, the rest of them are pretty crappy, to be honest. Anyway, without that said, or any more said, let's get on with things, shall we? So this is going to be my top 12 worst bots of 2019. Right, so the reason I'm doing 12 is because I do this end of month bot haul. I do this first and worst. I do the best bot and the worst bot I got every given month. That automatically gives me a list of the 12 best and then the 12 worst bots. There will be a couple of dishonourable mentions at the end, so I decided to throw a few extras in for good measure. So let's get started, shall we? Right, the first in January. Now this is one of those bots where, like I said, where I don't particularly dislike this bot. It just that it was a case of I liked everything else better than this, and something had to be the worst bot. And in January, it was this guy. This is a Magic Squares Surfer. It is their Legend Scale G1 Sea Spray, and it came in a 2-pack with their 4-wheel drive, which was their Beachcomber figure. Now I bought that 2-pack for the Beachcomber because I character mold set collect Beachcomber, and it came with this guy as a Brucey bonus. To be honest, I never would have bought this guy because I'm not really that bothered about Sea Spray, to be honest. So I never would have bought it had it been in an individually packaged bot, but I got it anyway as part of a 2-pack. And it's not a bad bot. It's a great little bot. It's got a great little transformation. It's typical Magic Square. It's a really smart little figure. But it was the worst bot I got in January because everything else was better than it. I liked everything else more than I did this. And like I said, it's a bot that I wouldn't otherwise have bought because of reasons. I just got it as an extra in a 2-pack, and I never really asked for it. So it's not his fault. I don't hate this thing. It's a decent enough bot in itself, but back in January, something had to be the worst bot, and unfortunately he drew the short straw. So poor old Magic Square Surfer. He got the worst of the bunch, but it's not his fault. Like I said, this is a decent little bot, but as I said, because of other reasons, other circumstances, he got the wooden spoon. So that was him. So then we're moving on to February, and KTRT time. Yeah, Mecha 03. Stegotank from the Mecha Captain Dino Season 2. Now, out of the 2 KTRTs I bought back in February, I bought 2 Stego bots. They both transformed into Stegosaurs. I got this guy from the Mecha series, and I got the other guy from that new Korean series that sort of came out called Jurassic Cops. And I got Jurassic Cops Jutego. And even though Jurassic Cops Jutego, it was the first bot from a new Korean toy company, and it was a little bit wanting, for want of a better word. The build quality wasn't the greatest on it, The engineering could have been a bit better, but it was still a decent enough bot. Now this guy is by Young Toys, a company that is probably one of the biggest toy companies in Korea. They've been going for donkey's years. It's very solidly built, high quality materials, nice solid plastic. However, it was the design ethos on this toy which really let it down. Now, quite a lot of the figures from Mecha Season 2 or Captain Dino, they're parts forming, and this guy's no exception because his arms come off and then they sort of fold up to to plug onto the back of the Stegosaur. So they've got parts forming going on, and as we all know, that's never a good thing really when it comes to transforming toys. I mean, sometimes it's doable, it's acceptable, but not in this case. Also, the hips on this guy, the hips are locked. You have to sort of unpeg them to move them backwards and forwards. They have like a little lock, and you can see they just lock into place to have them stood up in robot mode, which is, again, it's shit. They could have put some some strong ratchets on these hips, and they could have worked like normal legs. And the rest of it, the joints are really odd, and it was just such a letdown, And I expected more, but I kind of knew what I was letting myself in for when I bought this thing, because I'd watched Korean reviews of it, and it was one of those bots that I didn't buy when it first came out. I sort of passed over it until later on, because throughout this year I've had a number of times where there hasn't been anything new, particularly from the Korean lines that's floated my boat. So I sort of look back at other bots that I've overlooked, and then I go back and I buy them, and that was the case with this guy. But, I knew he was going to be a bit of a stinker, and when he arrived, he was, it's crap. It's garbage. So, yeah, that's why this guy was my worst thing that I picked up in February. Mecha, Captain Dino, Stegotank. Right, so, on to March. And it was, I went to the MCM Comic Con at Birmingham, because obviously they have two MCM Comic Cons, and I bought a couple of bits from, I took £100 and I bought some bits from the in-demand store, and I managed to get that black, Power of the Primes, Optimus Primal, the Throne of the Primes. I managed to get hold of one of those, but it was £85, so I didn't have much money left over, so I could only afford to buy some little things. And I bought a 2-pack of Micromasters, and I bought the 2-pack with Red Heat and Stakeout. And when I came to the the end of the video, I had to pick a bot that was the worst. And this guy, he's got very loose legs. When you're transforming him, bits pop off, and yeah, he's a small basic bot, so it's not really fair to call this the worst thing that I got in any given month because of his size and the fact that he's a very simplistic nature. It's a bit unfair to pick on him like that, but the G1 Stakeout was a decent little bot, and it was pretty solid for what it was. Even though I don't have it, I bought it and then I sold it to Bisto Yeti because he was after it. But this guy, articulation wise, it's pretty basic. It's got ball jointed legs. He has got a moving head though, which is quite unusual for a Micromaster, and he's got solid arms. But it was just a little disappointing. I know some of these Micromasters that I've got, I haven't got many of them. I've bought a few, but they've not really done much for me, to be honest. But this guy, again, he drew the short straw back in March, so he was in my opinion, the worst thing that I got in that particular month. So yeah, Siege Micromaster Stakeout. Then April. Another KTRT. Tobot v Great Admiral. Now, This thing does have some plus points. It transforms into this massive great red spaceship or submarine or whatever it is, some kind of large vessel that's really big and impressive. Also, his toe key, because he's a Tobot, he has a toe key, and let's pull it out, and it's this thing. This turns into like a little articulated Oriental dragon about that long. I don't want to mess around with it because I want to plug it back into the what's-it, but this thing is amazing. This thing is worth almost the price of admission to buy this guy just to get hold of the dragon toe key. But yeah, that sort of plugs in. It plugs into the front of the ship, and it plugs into his chest there to form his breastplate. But the rest of this thing, now this is it's kind of a combiner. It's designed to combine with another figure called Tank Guy, which is a big blue tank which breaks apart, and then you plug bits on his legs and bits on his arms, and you make this guy bigger, and they combine together to form Greatest Admiral. I haven't got Tank Guy, but because of the way the engineering works for the combiner, this guy has been mauled by the combiner gimmick, so to speak. Start off with his shoulders. They do not go backwards and forwards. He's got elbow, and the arm goes up and down, but the shoulder does not go backwards and forwards, so he's got a frozen joint. Also, he can't hold on to his sword. The legs, very short thighs, big massive chunky legs. He's got so much kibble on this guy. He's got these massive great chunks of kibble on his legs. He's got this huge flappy thing which is like a major section of the spaceship mode sort of plugged on his back. Then you've got a parts form piece there, which, as you can see, falls off. Yeah, and the engineering on this guy is not the greatest. Articulation's heavily compromised, and he looks fantastic. He looks great, but he flatters to deceive, and he's really not that great, to mess around with, and it was quite easily the worst thing that I got in April. He's just, as KTRTs go, he's very, very disappointing. Yes, he does have his plus points, but the negative points by far outweigh the plus points on this guy. He's just so so disappointing, and you just can't work with this thing. It's so rigid and barely moves. And he's massive as well. He's huge, probably a little bit too big, but for his own good. But there you go. That's him. That was the worst bot that I got in April. Moving on to May. Now, I like my Megatron gun formers. As you can see, I have a few. In fact, as far as I'm aware, I've got all of them up to date. But there was one Megatron gun-ish former that had eluded me, and that was the because there was TFC did a bunch of Targetmaster, third-party sort of Targetmaster bots, which they were based on mainstream Transformers characters, and they did a twin pack with an Optimus and a Megatron in. The Optimus is called Opti-Aim, and he's in here, and the Megatron was called Megashoton, and he transforms kind of into a Cybertronian shotgun. Now, this is an early TFC product, and as we know, TFC, not the greatest of third-party companies, especially in the early days. They did a whole bunch of these. They did a load of Seekers. They did various repaints of the Optimus mold, as like Nemesis Prime and Ultra Magnus, and they did all the Seekers, and they did a Hot Rod one as well. They did a bunch of these, and they just transform into guns like Target Masters. But the build quality on this thing it's not great. It's very wobbly. I mean, look, the chest doesn't plug in properly. Transforming it's not fun, and when you transform it, it doesn't look much like a shotgun, to be honest. It just looks like a robot, sort of spread eagle with a barrel and a trigger on it. It's not that great, and it was pretty easy to to make this the worst bot that I got. back in May. It was pretty easy to say, yeah, that's garbage. That's the worst thing that I got. The Optimus, the Opti-Aim is a little bit better than this guy. You know, it's a bit more solid. It plugs together a lot better. Looks more like a gun than this thing. And I like my Megatron gunformers, and this thing just disappointed me so much when I got it. So yeah, that's why this was the worst bot that I got in May. Then on to June. Again, kind of another KTRT. I mean, when we get to my top bots of the year, you will see the bigger brother of this guy, the proper version. But I found out that there was on AliExpress there was somebody selling undersized KOs of some of the Miniforce figures, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to get one of them. And they were doing this. So this is a KO undersized version of Miniforce X Raybot. Now, Miniforce X Raybot is a big, massive, impressive bot. You'll probably see when I do my top bots of the year, he's on there. He blew me away. He was like one of the best bots I got last year. This isn't. This is one of the worst bots I got this year. It's basically the same toy. It's been downsized. It does the same things as the big one does. It's a triple changer. It's got like a robot mode, a car mode, and a bird mode. The bird mode is it's a bit of a stretch to call it a bird, but you know, it's got a beast mode, kind of. But you can probably hear this thing is super rattly. They've simplified the engineering on a number of places. It's lacking paint apps. It's got very thin sort of creaky plastic that they've made it out of. It's just not good. The ratchets just... Or you can... The ratchets just do not work very well. And yeah, it's just... I mean, this is the reason why, you know, you buy an original toy and then you buy a KO of it, like a poor quality KO of it, and it's like chalk and cheese. And I just wanted to see what a KO KTRT bot would be like. That's why I bought this. I just bought it as an example. I did a review on it as well, a comparative review with the other one, and yeah, it's night and day between the two. Quite literally, this thing is very, very disappointing. I think you can buy official ones of this undersized figure. I'm pretty sure Young Toys, no, not Young Toys. Who does Miniforce? Oh, it's that new company, isn't that? Is it Gina? Gina? Not Gina. I can't remember who it is. Anyway, whoever makes Miniforce figures now used to be Sonocon, but it's not. It's some other company. They do make an official downsized Miniforce X figures, but I bet it isn't as bad as this. But anyway, yeah, I bought it, and yeah, you get what you pay for at the end of the day. It's a KO. What were you expecting? So yeah, this turned out to be the worst bot that I bought in June. So this is a KO undersized Miniforce X Raybot. Then, next one. I managed to get hold of Siege Greenlight. In fact, she's up there with my Orphea or whatever it's called. You know, the female fembot combiner. She's up there. But it came with this little Battlemaster thing called Dazzle Strike. Now it's a remold of that was it not Lio Kaiser? What was it called? From the first wave of Battlemasters. It's basically a remold of that with slightly different colour on the tail sword. It's not very good. Again, it's another case of one of those really, really small naff little bots. You know, Micromasters. When you look at everything else I got in that month, they're all bigger and better than this. So it got the short end of the stick and became the worst bot that I got that month, which you can say isn't really fair. But to be honest, I mean, this thing, I mean, again, it was something that I got as a Brucey bonus with another figure that I wanted to buy, and I wouldn't have bought this individually had it been sold separately. So it's the same as that Magic Square sea spray that I showed you at the beginning of the video. It's a similar sort of deal with this. I mean, the transformation is, you just sort of fold its legs up, and it becomes a sword, and it's like, nah. Nah, I'm sorry, it's not my thing, it's not my cup of tea. Nah. So yeah, it became the scapegoat for for my July haul. This thing, it was very pretty naff, pretty rubbish, not really my thing. So yeah, that's why it was the worst bot that I got in July. Siege Battlemaster Dazzle Strike. Then August. Now, obviously August TF Nation, and bought a lot of bots at TF Nation, and a couple of bots that I bought were from the Space Bridge. I got hold of the Transformers Authentics Alpha and Bravo Grimlocks. Now the Alpha is okay. I mean, these things are very, very basic. They're designed to be sold in discount stores, and they're built down to a budget. They're very simplistic. They're very hollow. They've got very few joints. They're not very well painted. Very, very cheap and nasty bots. But I got both the Bravo and the Alpha one. And this is the Bravo Grimlock. Now, out of the two, this is by far the least desirable out of the two. It's smaller. It's got a little less going on. I mean, it's got like the stupid hollow legs. It hardly stands up. It's got these silly little arms, and yeah, the build quality and engineering on it isn't fantastic. But to be fair, there was another Studio Series Deluxe bot that I bought later at the event, and that turned out to be equally as bad. And it was a bit of a toss-up between this bot and that bot. You'll see that bot in the dishonourable mentions, actually. But I decided that this was the worst bot that I got in August. Yeah, so yeah, it was pretty much the worst thing that I got, in my opinion. So there we go. Transformers Authentics Bravo Grimlock. Now, September was another NEC Toy Fair. NEC Toy Fairs, I mean, literally today's the 27th. I went to one today and picked up some bits from one today, some bits and bobs from one today, which you'll see in my end of month bot haul. But yeah, I took some money to the NEC in September and bought a few things. And one of the bits I picked up was this guy. Transformers Go G10 Hishoumaru. Now, the reason I bought this was because I wanted an example of a bot from the Transformers Go line, which is a Japanese show which I knew little or nothing about. I had sort of seen some clips on YouTube about it, and I know they did some unique toys which had like this unusual combiner gimmick. And they also did a lot of repaints of the Transformers Prime figures, which they repainted for the Transformers Go series. But anyway, I wanted to get hold of one of the figures from the line, and there was the guy from was it King Street toy shop in Wolverhampton on the left-hand wall, about halfway along. He's usually there, and I like to buy bits from him. And he had a couple of them. He had this guy and the purple shark guy. And I decided to get this. Big mistake. I mean, I knew these guys had this combiner gimmick where they have the three bots, and they can combine they sort of one on top of the other to form. One bot forms the trousers, one forms the shoulders, and the other forms the head. And they have this unique connection system that makes it work. Because if you look, this guy's got his his hips are up in his armpits, and that's all part of the combiner gimmick. I mean, this guy hasn't got a proper torso. He hasn't got a proper waist, and the articulation on this thing is it's not great. And also the kibble. I mean, look at these huge, great chunks of kibble that are on his legs. He turns into a bird bot of a sort, and it's not that great. I mean, I do regret buying this. This is one of the bots on this list that, very much, buyer's regret after I bought it. But, I bought it simply as an example of something from the Transformers Go line, and it fulfills that criteria. But still, it was a pretty bad bot, and it was a pretty obvious choice for, the worst bot that I got in September. So, yeah, Transformers Go G10 Hishoumaru. Right, so getting on to the last few months of the year. We've got October, and Hello Carbot Prime Unity Mirinae. Now, this is one of those Crash Combiner figures that the Hello Carbots toy line have introduced into their lineup. They did some in one of the earlier seasons, but then in the latest season, season 7, they went back to them with a vengeance. They did a whole string of them, and they're crossover characters from another toy line of theirs called Turning Met Card. And Mirinae is one of the figures from that toy line that they crossed over into the thing. Now, this thing, you can fold it up. Folds up into two little cars. Like so, and then you put them together and it springs open into a Pegasus ish, a flying horse with a horn. And when I saw this figure, I thought, I've got to get me one of those, just because of what it transformed into. I mean, as a transforming toy, it's got a one-step spring-loaded transformation gimmick, no articulation, it's a one-trick pony, quite literally, and I really wanted one. Unfortunately, when these new figures started appearing on eBay, this character wasn't amongst them. They did all the other ones, but not this one. For some reason, they held this one back. And when it did appear, it was a kind of very, very pricey scalper prices. It was like 45 quid for this, and I refused to pay that price. There was some guy in America who had it listed for with the shipping and that. It was over 45 quid, and I refused to pay that because I bought a similar sort of thing to this previously, a little dragon former called Dragonix, and I only paid about, it was about 28 quid or something. It wasn't that much. I think it was about 25 quid or something, which is a decent amount of money to pay for something like this, but definitely not 45 quid. But anyway, I carried on searching. Eventually I found some seller in Korea who was doing it for just over 30 quid, and I was willing to stretch to that. So I bought it, and it got shipped over, and it was a bit delayed getting shipped. And when it finally arrived in the country, yeah, it got the dreaded customs hit slapped on it. And when you put the customs price on top of what I'd already paid for it, it came out at 45 odd quid. So I ended up paying the high-end scalper price for this figure anyway. So needless to say, that upset me a great deal, and this figure went down in my estimations big style. It's still a decent little toy. I don't regret buying it, but when I think about the price that I paid for this thing, it really, really smarts. And yeah, I've got to be I mean, I've got to be careful when you know buying these Korean toys sometimes, because you get stung if you're not careful. So yeah, I ended up getting this. Hello Carbot's Prime Unity Mirinae. And then last month, yeah, did my haul video and did that stuff about, you know, ooh, Copa, FTC Copa bollocks, you know, oh, we're all going to get fined in the new year because our videos don't meet these new, you know, child-friendly standards that are coming in and all that bollocks. Yeah, I decided I was going to, you know, quit YouTube and delete my channel, blah, blah, blah. Well, then I had a change of heart because I learnt more things about what was actually going to happen. I mean, yeah, okay, I'm probably safe. You know, I've taken steps to safeguard my channel against, you know, any possible problems from YouTube. I mean, the FTC can't touch us, you know, anyone outside the US, because FTC, you know, Federal Trade Commission, it's an American you know, thing. It can only affect people in the US. Anyone outside the US, they haven't got a leg to stand on. They can't legally, you know, prosecute people outside the US because they can't. I mean, YouTube can probably chase people on their behalf, but they can't actually, you know, go at them directly. And I think they were saying that they're only going after people who have monetized channels, and they're only going after the big channels that make lots of money. And even then, these $42,000 fines, that was a maximum amount they were going to apply to any given video, provided you had the means to pay it. You know, because, you know, if you were you know, one of these big Uber tubers that's making, you know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year from your channel, then yeah, you know, you're going to get you know, hit with a fine if one of your videos doesn't qualify to the rules, and because you can afford to pay it, because, you know, you're making lots of money out of YouTube. You know, your YouTube revenue would be means tested, and then you would be fined accordingly. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm staying on YouTube. I mean, the fact that I'm doing this video now is proof of that. But anyway, last month, November, finally got hold of one of these. Yeah, I got hold of an Impossible Toys TS02 Rebelor. And this turns into the G1 Tetra jet, you know, the nice swoopy, you know, triangle flying triangle thing. It does that, but yeah, the rest of it is nah, it's not that great. Worth buying for the alt mode, but the robot mode and the engineering and the build quality on this is it's garbage, it's trash. And this thing is it's very, very poorly designed. I mean, there's so much kibble on this on the back. You know, you've got all these plain bits just hanging. The proportions aren't that great. Transforming it is scary. It's really scary because, I mean, I have broken a few pegs on it trying to transform it. So yeah, it's easily one of the worst things I've bought this year. So yeah, it was a no-brainer really last month to make this the worst bot that I got. Impossible Toys TS02 Rebelor. And we're on to December. Now, obviously, this month I haven't done my end of month bot haul yet, so you don't know what I've got. But I've just been to the NEC Toy Fair today, and I've bought the last couple of bots, so everything's in now. I'm not buying anything else now for the rest of the year, so I can go ahead and get these videos out. And this month, I decided to go on my usual pre-Christmas toy hunt, and it was very disappointing because I only managed to find 2 things worth buying from Smith's, which was my first stop on that particular trip. And it was this Cyberverse Spark Armor Cheetor. I wanted to get this because 2 reasons. 1, because of the Cheetor figure, and 2, because, you know, the Spark Armor turns into a battleship, and I quite like the look of that. This thing, it's a bit basic, to be honest. Now I've got a lot of the smaller Spark armors where you put the armor on yourself and they're fine, they're good, they're okay. But then you get these slightly bigger ones. They call them elite class, and the armor's got like a spring-loaded gimmick. You sort of fold it over, and it sort of falls into place. And this one, as you can see, and then you unplug it. Oh, come on, stay on there. Stupid bloody thing. I don't know why this piece here unplugs. Well, there's the ship anyway. The ship comes off, and then you're left with little Cheetor dude. Now, he's okay, but the transformation's very basic to put him into cat mode. You just sort of like swap the heads around, sort of lay him down, move his legs a little bit, and you're done. Very, very simple, very, very basic transformation. Not much to it, to be honest. So yeah, and because of that reason, because it's a bit plain and a bit basic, that's the reason why I decided that this was the worst thing that I got this month. This thing, you plug it on into the back, and then you just fold it over, and then the arms fold down like that, and then it plugs into the front, and then you can't really do anything with it. The arms, they can sort of, they've got like a bicep swivel thing, but they can't move. You can't move them backwards and forwards. You can't move them in and out. It's yeah, very. You can sort of move. He has this extra helmet that goes over the top of his head, and you can sort of move that around, but it's very simplistic, very basic. There's not a lot to it, and that's the reason why I decided that this was the worst thing I got this month. So that, as we say, is that. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, I was going to do a couple of dishonourable mentions. So the first was a figure I picked up in April at the NEC Toy Fair, and I bought it from the Space Bridge because they were there back in April. Cyber Battalion Shockwave. Now, the reason this is a dishonourable mention is because this is an example of how one design decision can ruin a toy, right? This is a great looking Shockwave. It's a nice chug, like a Voyager figure, Voyager Shockwave. It looks amazing. Looks classic. The alt mode is, a bit rubbish. But the biggest problem with this, he's got no working knees. He has 5 swivels, but his legs are frozen. They're fixed. And yeah, that just ruins it. That just ruins this figure completely, is the fact that, it hasn't got any working knees. And it's a shame, really, because otherwise, even though it's a very cheap and basic figure, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty damn good as a G1 style Shockwave. But it's just a shame they didn't give it working knees. If they give it working knees, it probably would have been on my best bots list rather than as a dishonourable mention on my worst bots list. So yeah, that's the first of those. Then in June. Now, this is Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus. This isn't the dishonourable mention. No, the dishonourable mention is what's inside it. If you open that and then pull this out, get rid of that. You end up with this thing. Now, graphic example of why this thing's a dishonourable mention. we go. Right. Now this is... It's a knockoff. It's a knockoff of the Perfect Effects third-party add-on for Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus. Basically, they made this little white prime. This transforms into like a little deluxe scale figure, and then it combines with the Combiner Wars armor to form, you know, Ultra Magnus. But this isn't the Perfect Effects. This is the KBB KO, and it's a one-to-one exact copy of the original Perfect Effects thing, apart from one thing that's different, and that is the build quality. Now, Perfect Effects stuff is amazing. It's fantastic. The few Perfect Effect figures I've got or I've handled have always been exemplary third-party pieces, and the quality, the engineering on them is it's beautiful. It's top drawer stuff. This is a knockoff of one of those sort of figures, and it shows because the engineering, the original Perfect Effect engineering, is still there and it still works. It's just the fit and finish on it, because it was made by a KO company, that lets it down. Like, for instance, you know, you've got that's not sitting in place properly. It's the tolerances on it are just not right. The plastic quality is not the best. You know, it's stuff like that, and they just let it down. Now, the Perfect Effects original of this is quite expensive. It's about 60, 65, 70 quid for basically a deluxe figure, which is a lot of money. This you can get for just under 20 quid. And I decided to get one. I got this off AliExpress. Again, you know, got it for, you know, around about 20 quid. But, you know, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It does exactly what the Perfect Effects figure is. It does exactly the same. It's just it doesn't do it as well. And at the end of the day, you get what you pay for. And maybe later on, I might, if I get the opportunity to get the Perfect Effects original at a reasonable price, then I will go for it. But in the meantime, I've got this as a stand-in. It still works, it still does everything it does, it just doesn't do it particularly well. And it's a bit of a letdown. And it's a perfect example why, if you've got the opportunity to buy an original, go for it. Don't go for the KO. Because, yeah, you get what you pay for. That's another dishonourable mention. Then we've got, in July, I got hold of the Siege, Micromaster, Lazerbeak and Ravage. Now, these things are very disappointing. Now, I think part of the reason is because they've got to fold into a very small, compact package. And because of that, the engineering on them very limited to what you can do with it. Now, Lazerbeak is very basic, very simplistic transformation. There it is. It's a bit naff. But then Ravage. Now, Ravage has got a lot more going for him in terms of transformations, a lot more involved with the transformation. However, what you end up with doesn't look much like a Black Panther. It's... I mean, I've got a thing for Ravage. I quite like Ravage, you know, and this one doesn't do it justice, to be honest. In fact, both of these, making cassettes out of, you know, as Micromasters isn't such a good idea. I mean, we've got the Rumble and Frenzy coming, and they look a bit stunted. The Ratbat looks okay, but the rest of them, it doesn't really work. I don't think it does. They don't really work as cassettes because they're a little bit too compact to really work properly as a cassette. But anyway, yeah, I wasn't too impressed with these, to be honest, and that's why they're a dishonourable mention. And then finally, in August, that other figure that I said I got that was sort of, you know, similar to this, Studio Series Shatter. Now this is the car one. We've got the plain one coming and it looks a lot better. But this thing, where to start? I mean, this could quite easily have been on my worst bots of the year list instead of this guy, and they could have been switched around. This could have been the honourable mention. This could have been on my August list. It's really that close. The head sculpt doesn't look like Shatter. It's just, I don't know what it is. It looks like a gimp wearing a bandana, because there's no eyes on it as such, and it's got like a little, you know, it's like sucking on a golf ball or something. Transformation on this thing is awful. It's terrible. Things pop off all the time. The clearance issues, the build quality on it, dire, absolute rubbish. The robot mode, the articulation's not the greatest. There's a lot of kibble getting in the way, you know, when you're trying to pose it. You got these stupid little things keep popping off. It's not fun. It's the opposite of fun to transform this thing. The alt mode doesn't look too bad, but getting it all pegged together properly is a mission in itself. It's not great. And then they did Dropkick car mode, and he's like totally different. He's a really good little figure, decent to transform, bit involved, but you know, his robot mode's better. He looks, it's got a proper face sculpt. You know, it's just way better in every respect than this thing. I mean, this thing is just garbage, and it must be one of the worst, you know, Studio Series figures they've ever done. Studio Series, was it SS40 Shatter car mode? And that is that. That is my worst bots of the year. Now, if I had to pick an ultimate worst out of all these bots to say which one is so much worse than the rest, I think it would have to be this guy. Yeah, Impossible Toys Rebelor. It is just, it's worth buying for the alt mode alone, but everything else about this, everything else is just bad. It's just bad. I mean, just holding it, it just feels horrible in the hands. You know, it's just, everything is bad about it. There's nothing good about the robot mode or the transformation. The alt mode, the Tetrajet alt mode is good. Everything else is bad. And yeah, so out of all the bots I bought this year, this is by far the worst. So there we go. That's it. That's my worst bots of 2019. In a couple of days' time, I will be doing my best bots of 2019. So until then, I've been TFR Wilderness. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I'll catch you all next time. Ta-da.